My colleague Enxing represents Gasterra. Gasterra is the main gas seller and supplier in the Netherlands, so Holland. So then Stefan Marland, sorry.
Stephen Marland.
Stephen Marland. Stephen represents National Grid. National Grid is the main grid owner and operator in the United Kingdom, I think electricity and gas.
That's correct, yes.
To my left, Bernard Blaise. Bernard Blaise comes from GDF Suez when he's deputy director of the research division. And the final one is Werner Versing, representing E.ON from Germany. So the panel here represents, I think, most of the main European gas markets, except Italy, but we are in Italy, so you should know a lot about the Italian gas market. So before starting the question and answer session, I have asked my colleagues to briefly introduce the reason why their organization, company, has such high interest in the development of gas heat pumps. So, Bernard, you were the first one on my previous list.
Okay.
So maybe it works.
So, perhaps if I press this button, okay, this appears. So, I must say a few words first about the French energy context in order to explain why GDF Suez is very interested in Heat4U project. So the French energy context is a very strong competition in France between electric heating and gas heating in residential market. On the left drawing, you have the market share for new dwellings during the year, the different years from 2001 to now. And in blue, you have electricity market shares, and in green, you have gas market shares. What you can see on this plot is that during 9 years, the gas market share have decreased to reach a minimum of 30%. And during this period, electricity direct heating was developing very fast, and with the consequence that the electricity peak in winter was drastically increasing. And when the electricity peak is increasing, of course, it creates great problems, but also the CO2 amount of the kilowatt hour produced is, of course, not the nuclear CO2 content. So this is the situation that dured till 2009. Now the situation has completely changed since market shares on the residential market has increased a lot, and it is only because customers become to be very interesting by energy efficiency. And the buildings now, new buildings, are high efficiency buildings, and gas solutions are much more efficient than, of course, electricity solution. So now the situation is completely changing, and if we want to continue on this trend, we have to continue to develop very high efficiency gas solutions, and especially renewable energy and gas solutions. That's why CHP are, of course, very well placed. And that's why we have, in GDF Suez, we have developed, we have defined a technology roadmap, and these technology roadmaps aims to develop different new gas technologies for the residential market. And one of the needs of the gas market is to have new products. You told it, but it's very important. And our roadmap is mainly based on micro CHP, on gas heat pumps, but also what we call hybrid heat pumps, which are electric heat pumps coupled with gas boiler. And of course, in these roadmaps, gas heat pumps are really very, very interesting. And the last thing is that for us, for the individual markets, we need gas heat pumps. So for us, the challenge of Heat4U is to make downsizing of the existing product that is working on 38 kilowatt, and we need downsizing in order to provide our individual customer all the qualities of the gas heat pumps.
Okay, thank you very much, Bernard. So the next one is ENG.
Yeah.
Could you present your slides?
I hope, yeah, it works. I hope
Thank
the
you.
slides. Next one. Yeah, energy transition and gas appliances in the Netherlands. Why are we interested in efficient and smart gas appliances and systems? Because with natural gas you can reach a high efficiency in appliances. It's already stated that it has the lowest CO2 emission of fossil fuels. In the Netherlands, we have our own gas resources, and that's why we export to France, Italy, Germany. Germany is our largest export country. Sorry. So that's why for us in our situation we have a lot of natural gas by our own. Furthermore, we have an excellent gas infrastructure. 98% of all houses in the Netherlands have a gas connection. So we are interested in a lot of gas appliances, and I state there micro CHP and mini CHP, but we see a gaining interest, an increasing interest for gas heat pumps, and it could also be, we ask why. It could be because of we have a kind of congress, one annual congress. It is called Power to Go, and it is combined mini CHP and heat pumps. And there we try to inform installers, project managers, decision makers about making the right choice, because what we see in the Netherlands is that also the installers and housing companies and decision makers, they don't know exactly what kind of gas appliance or system is relevant or interesting for in their circumstances. And sometimes we forget, it is possible to have a very smart combination of systems. It does not only to be a CHP or a heat pump, it could also be combined with sustainable power. Okay, then our focus on gas heat pumps, well, we think it has a tremendous potential for efficiency improvements, just like also other systems. It is simply to integrate into the existing energy infrastructure in the Netherlands. And what we see, we have a problem, or we are getting a problem in the Netherlands, and that is that we have to invest in reinforcing the electricity grid, and that's why in the Netherlands there are being built at this moment a lot of power stations also. So the electricity grid should not be reinforced. So gas heat pumps, it is a considerable potential in the built environment in the Netherlands. And when we're looking at volumes, then we think that in 2012 we could have some 500 units on a total of approximately 5,000 in the Netherlands. So just finally looking at the heating and cooling demand, then we see that the heat demand in the housing and commercial sector is decreasing because buildings are highly insulated, and also from an architectural point of view, the buildings are being better and better, so the heat demand is decreasing. The cooling demand is increasing, and I think there is a very good opportunity for smaller driven heat pumps. So this would be my statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henk, for this information about the Dutch situation. Stephen, what about the UK now?
Thank you, Daniel. I'm just going to move straight into the first slide, and I think what I wanted to really talk about was about the long-term picture which we see in the UK. So, and where does technology fit within that picture? Over the next 10 years, we tend to do forecasts which really bring growth. So, and that growth really has an impact on how the network will expand, how much capacity we actually put into our gas infrastructure, and also in terms of the electricity systems that we also develop. We actually invest for about 45 years, so it's very important that we understand not only what the growth potential is, but what could happen to those investments over the long duration. So we also play around with scenarios, and most of our scenarios pick up on whether or not the long-term future, what could happen in terms of economics, the security of supply of fuel sources, and also to be consistent with the UK commitments to be sustainable. So I guess the UK has two main sustainable challenges. The first one was the European Renewable Energy Directive, which prescribes the UK to delivering 15% of its energy from renewable sources, which may to some people in the audience feel like that doesn't feel like a very tough challenge, but at the moment 98% of our energy is fossil fuel based. A large amount of it comes from gas, all of our transport is oil based, and most of our electricity is either gas or coal-fired generation. So we've actually only got 2% renewables at the moment in the UK, so it's quite a big challenge to move from that position to 2020. In 2008, the UK set into legislation the Climate Change Act of 2008, and that created a law within the UK that effectively meant that we would actually stand by our commitments to reduce our carbon emissions by 80% by 2050. And so if you really want to have a discussion with government around what would be the future energy policies, the technologies, what infrastructure we need, it's got to be consistent with those two objectives of increasing renewable technologies and the proportion of renewable energy within the energy mix, and secondly, to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And I think it's fair to say over the next 10 years, the UK has a reasonable strategy of how to tackle that first renewable energy directive, and that largely comes from decarbonising the electricity system. As you can see from the top right-hand pie chart, the 12% of our electricity, 12% of our primary energy is electricity, and yet it accounts for over 25% of our greenhouse gas emissions. It's incredibly carbon intensive, and that's largely due to the dependence on coal and gas-fired generation. So as we move forward, we expect to see a greater contribution coming from offshore and onshore wind turbines. And then as we start to progress beyond 2020, we start to see a more balanced picture coming back in with nuclear power coming back on the table and carbon capture and storage. And around about 2030, we see that we need to make a decision, and that decision is really around, do we transition a vast majority of our heating and transport onto electricity, or do we find other technologies which can fill that void? And to put some perspective on this, if we exclude power generation, gas demand will have to probably come down to around about somewhere between a quarter and a half of what we're consuming today. So that's quite a tough challenge for us. Now, clearly we can increase that percentage if we adopt biomethane or synthetically produced natural gases, but it gives you the signal that we really do need more efficient appliances. And to put some perspective on that as well, we've actually been reducing our demand for gas on the residential scale by around about 15% over the last 5 years, and we expect that to continue for at least a decade. So it's an interesting picture that we have, but I do actually firmly believe that technology rather than transition is a big role to play in the market going forward. Daniel, do you want me to carry on with this, or do you want to move on to somebody else?
1 minute only, because we have Werner
Okay, well, I was just going to talk about where do we see the role and why do we think the residential market is so important to the UK. I put up a chart at the top here. We call this a low duration curve. So effectively on the left-hand side of that axis, we have stacked up the greatest demand day that we see for gas in 2011. So it's a forecast. And on the right-hand side, you'll see pretty much the summer demand picture. So in the middle of that, you've got a blend of autumn and spring. And the orange at the top is the residential gas demand. And it actually, from our perspective, it dominates the demand and the infrastructure requirements that we have for gas. And you'll notice that it's highly seasonal. In much the same as the Netherlands, about 83% of our population is connected to the gas grid. We have 22 million customers, and the vast majority of the ones which are off gas use oil, so a more carbon-intensive fuel source. I also wanted to point out that there's actually quite a big variance between new build and older properties. When we tend to talk about the average consumer, it's typically around the order of 18 megawatt hours a year of gas consumption. But actually we have some properties which consume in excess of 40 megawatt hours a year. And yet we have flats, brand new flats, which are largely driven by hot water demand rather than spatial heating. And they consume far less, about 4 megawatt hours per year. So when we get to that transitional point, we really do need to think about, is it a technology which reduces our demand for gas and becomes more efficient, or is it a transition to an alternative fuel source?
Thank you very much, Stephen, for this explanation. So we move to the last country. So Werner, Germany, you represent E.ON. We have all heard that the German energy industry is very challenging by the political decision of last year. So we are waiting for your explanations.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud today here that I can present the German situation now, and if you make analysis for a supplier for gas and electricity, we are now under pressure in Germany. You can read it every time in every newspaper. If you look at the Handelsblatt in Germany, you can have every information if you look for all energy companies now. And the gas market is now very important, under pressure. And the central market is the hot water and heating systems. And the question is, what is now in 10, 20, 30 years in this market? That is one question. And it's a big challenge for us to find the right way in Germany. Can I have my first slide, please? I think you have to push okay. You see here, that is the goals from the government. I discussed it in the morning. I see it's clear in Germany we want to reduce the CO2 emissions, I think step for step, 2020 to 40%, and in 2030 to 55%. I think it's a big step in 20 years. If you look then to the reduction of primary energy, you must reduce to 20% or 30% in Germany. And for renewable energy now, we have the limit for 20% in 2020 by 18, and the next step is 27%. I think we must find for this an answer in the energy department and energy companies. And one way is the heat pump. Maybe heat pumps with a special price for the customers, not only for 25,000, 30,000 euro. We must have a realistic price. And important for this, I think, if you have a newspaper or a television, every time in the television you see in Germany, every second day you can see renewable energy is the best way. It's not a discussion what is the cost of the renewable energy. You see renewable energy, you must have renewable energy. And when you make an analysis, we in a gas company do something for biogas and hydrogen, is directly, I think, for green gas. And the next step is to find a compromise, to find the 27% of renewable energy in 2030. We combine it with technology for heating. We're looking for in the research center for different kind of technologies, for electrical heat pump, for solar technologies, for condensing boiler. And the next step is, I think we started in 1980 with this topic, gas heat pumps, is the gate heat pumps technology. And I think on the right picture you see what has happened in the heating market. if you read the newspaper, every people say in 2050 in the heating market you have no gas. That is not realistic. We have 18 million customers now in the gas market have a gas boiler. And that is the next one you can see. That is, maybe, we have 18 million customers now have a gas heating system. As a total is 37 million, nearly 50% have a gas installation, and we must find the answer. And that is what I mean in this project, why not a gas heat pump? So we can integrate all the three questions, CO2 reduction, primary reduction, and renewable energy. This is a good product. But the product is only so good for the efficiency. We must analyze the heating market too. We must look for the installation people. We must look for the engineering, more for the engineering. In total, if you have all the points to bring together, then you have a good efficiency, and then it's a good product for the market and a good product for the producer and for the energy company in Germany. I think is a great challenge for all. Not only in Germany, I think in UK, in all companies, in all countries, we must find a compromise between all the aspects. And my situation, I think it is so that the heat pump is one answer. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Werner, for this view of the German situation.